living in a sea of adults who look grown, but they are stunted, both mentally and emotionally, like a child. We're living in somewhat of an emotional immaturity pandemic. This is something I talk about a lot on my channel every now and then. I bring it up very briefly, but today I thought would be the perfect time to actually go into depth about what real maturity looks like. And this video can actually help you test yourself to see if you're actually mature or not, because a lot of things we actually overlook and we don't even realize some of our behaviors are actually immature. So I kind of wanted to bring that to light for you today. Now, in this video, when you watch, you're gonna have to be very self-aware. You're gonna have to not be so afraid to be self-aware. Self-awareness can be hard, self-awareness can be painful, but it's something that we all need to acquire, because in doing so, we will improve our own lives and the lives of people around us. So let's get into the video. Welcome to Treu Sovereignty, where we are mastering our minds so we can reclaim our peace. And on this channel, we intertwine self-improvement with critical thinking, because you can't have one without the other. In order to know about the world around you and be able to understand how everything works, you need to understand your inner world as well. Can't have one without the other. So I teach you how to know yourself so you can understand everything that's happening in your world. As we all know, that can be a little confusing at times. So I'm here to help. Let's get into the video. So the reason I can make a video like this, believe it or not, is because I was at one point an incredibly immature adult. I'm a reformed immature adult, or a reformed crazy bitch, as I like to call it. And I became mature. Why? Because it was either that or continue to live a tumultuous life. I've always been self-aware, at the very least. So I think that really helped me become mature ultimately at the end of the day. And that's why I think therapy worked for me, and doing inner work worked for me, because I was able to talk to myself and check myself constantly, to the point where it started to come naturally. And I just want to say that just because somebody's really mature, the most mature people on this planet, doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that they don't fall back into immature behaviors at times. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they're better than you. But the thing about mature people is that when they make mistakes, if they lash out by accident, if they get triggered, mature people will go back and reflect, and they will check themselves, and they will learn from the experience, as opposed to blaming other people or playing the victim. And that, my friend, is the difference between a mature adult and someone who's not. There are moments in life that are going to happen that are going to catch you off guard. Things that you've never had to deal with before. Triggers that have never triggered you so hard. Or the one cherry on top of the absolutely horrible day you were having, you find out another piece of bad news. Your Jenga tower just comes crashing down. These things are understandable to be upset about. If we lash out or we behave in a way that we don't typically behave due to these unexpected, unprecedented circumstances, that doesn't mean you're a failure, or that you're a bad person, or that you're not actually mature. A lot of maturity also comes with self-forgiveness, the ability to not shame yourself, the ability to parent yourself gently yet firmly, and that's also part of maturity. To be able to say, I am a human, I'm only human, I can only deal with so much before I just end up making a mistake. And it's important that, in this video you understand that it's more of a spectrum and not black and white. So it's not like you're either mature or you're immature. It's more like, which end of the spectrum are you on? Are you more on the mature end of the spectrum, or are you definitely more on the immature end of the spectrum? And that's more so how maturity works. And it's also about how you deal with things. So let's get into it a little bit more. Let's get into a little bit more detail about what happens when you are actually mature. So like the number one way to really tell if you're pretty good to go, pretty mature, is if you live around others, number one. So you have friends, you have family, maybe a spouse, maybe children, you go to work every day, okay? So you're around other people, and you can look back on your life for a year and say, yeah, my life was about 70% or more peaceful. And what I mean by this is not like something externally out of your control. So I'm not talking about like if you've had a death in the family, or you have a chronic disease, or you had a breakup or something. I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily, because we all know that life will hurl at us really horrible circumstances, even when we are mature, good people. You know, life's just not going to get easier because we're more mature, necessarily. The hard shit will get easier to deal with because we're mature. But life's not going to stop throwing horrible shit your way just because you're mature all of a sudden. No, I'm talking about petty drama. If you have petty drama in your life at a constant rate, and you can never seem to just have a day of peace, or a month of peace, or a week of peace, this is something to look at, because you are the common denominator in your life. And there is absolutely no fucking way that everything you go through is somebody else's fault all the time. If you're constantly complaining about other people, or your job, or your life, or your woe is me, that's a you problem. You know, it's kind of like the people who are constantly like, I don't like drama, but then they constantly have drama. They constantly seem to attract that drama into their life. And it's almost like this unnecessary drama that just doesn't need to happen. Like, for example, I'm kind of like this happy-go-lucky person. So if someone like starts a fight with me or something, or if I get into a fight with somebody, it's really most likely not because of me. And if that starts to happen a lot with that same person over and over, I'm probably not going to hang out with that person anymore, honestly. So if somebody's around me that's being aggressive or negative, I just don't want that in my life. You know, I want peace. I'd rather be alone than be around somebody that's full of negative energy constantly. So you'll find that mature people would rather be alone than constantly be around this unnecessary drama, right? Life in and of itself is a huge drama, but, you know, so why do we need to even add that extra unnecessary petty drama? We don't, and we don't want to. Because in the times where life is peaceful and we're not dealing with some bullshit, we actually take advantage of that. We don't get bored and then go looking for problems. That's not what mature people do. So look back on your year. I always say a good gauge would be like, and use your own discretion at this for your own life or your own problems. But I say if you've had 5 or more really horrible falling outs with people close to you, or even not close to you, like at a job or at school or something, you might have some inner work to do, because you are the common denominator. You know, and then on top of that, I would say, well, if it's all with the same person, it's just one person in your life causing you trouble, get that person out of your life. But yeah, especially if it's been with different situations, work, school, friend, spouse, you know, really, you really got to look within and say, you know, what was my responsibility in those situations? Like, yeah, they did me wrong, but what could I have done differently? You always have to ask that. So if you're not constantly losing people, if you can hold down a job, if you have a variety of good long-term relationships, if you're not constantly in trouble with the law, you know, if you're not always in a financial bind that is like, I guess, constantly putting you in tough positions, you know, you're probably good. You're probably good to go. You're probably on the right path there. at least in that sense. And yes, you do have to kind of have a community around you to be able to test this, to be able to gauge this. If you are off the grid, not around people at all, well, then I would say, well, you do have to be kind of mature to be off the grid and totally self-reliant. So at least in that sense, you're pretty mature. But yeah, otherwise, most people are around people. So most people will be able to test this in their own life. So ask yourself, is your life mostly people? Is your life mostly, there's hair in my mouth, god damn it. Is your life mostly peaceful, even with a bunch of people in it? A bunch of annoying people at times as well. The next indicator that you're probably pretty mature is that you take accountability for every little fucking thing. Even if you played 0% role in the bad situation and you are totally the victim, you will find how you could have prevented it, number one, and number two, how you can move forward after the situation's over. So let me give you an example. If someone ends up in an abusive relationship, so how can they take responsibility? Well, they ignored the red flags in the beginning. They didn't educate themselves enough before dating to know what red flags are when dating. And number two, even if they saw the red flags, they chose to stay anyway. The person proved at one point or another that they were not a mentally healthy person, that they were abusive, and you chose to stick that out. You chose to stay with them. So you need to take responsibility for that. This is not victim blaming, because it's not me telling you, shit, covering up the fucking mic. It's not victim blaming because I'm not like saying this to you. Like I would never say this to a friend who just got out of an abusive relationship, for instance. I would never say, well, are you gonna take responsibility for that? No, this is something that you say to yourself, okay? I'm only saying it here because I'm trying to teach you something. You in yourself should be able to say, well, I did ignore the red flags. Now, don't get me wrong, there are situations where there's tons of reasons that someone can't escape a certain situation or can't ignore red flags. For example, if you are a child and your parents are abusive, obviously you're not gonna tell a child, well, can you take responsibility for that? That's totally different. I'm talking about when you're an adult and you can make your own decisions independently of anybody else and you have free reign and autonomy. This is when you ask yourself those questions, okay? Now this part can include children who have been through abuse, and it can include other horrible situations, and this would be, how are you moving forward? So for the person in the abusive relationship, it would be breaking up with the abuser, processing, not getting into another relationship, staying single, going to therapy perhaps, and doing all the inner work in order to properly move on and release and let go of that attachment. And also release and let go of the abuse that they put you through. So that would be kind of like the second step of that situation. And like I said, that includes children who've been through childhood abuse. You have to take responsibility at some point to heal from those horrific traumas. And mature people take the time to do that because they know that if they don't, their life is going to suffer. The people around them will suffer, they will suffer, and so on and so forth. And it's just going to be an endless cycle of repeating patterns, pretty much. Repeating toxic patterns. So that's why you want to take care of that and nip it in the bud. It's never too late to do that type of stuff. So mature people do not constantly blame others. They do not constantly play the victim. They might never play the victim. They might actually assert that they are not a victim. Mature people take charge of their life. They take charge of their responsibilities, their choices, their actions, and their behaviors. plain and simple. They think before they do. And they think about the consequences that everything has, and a lot of it is actually also long-term consequences. They typically know how to process tough stuff without numbing, and they also know that numbing has long-term consequences. That the little things you do every day are going to affect your future in a big way. They just have this broader, wider view of life. So let me just give you an example. If I lash out at this person because I'm annoyed by them, first of all, I'm not going to think very highly of myself if I do that, number one. Number two, the people around me might feel scared. I might frighten the people around me in doing that. And whoever I'm with might also look at me differently. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to portray myself as? And mature people try to do that every single day. Mature people have trouble sleeping at night when they know that they could have behaved better in a certain situation. Absolutely. That is maturity. Mature people tend to act more stoic in tough moments. And a tough moment could be anything. It could be losing a job. It could be a breakup. It could be a friendship breakup. Losing somebody, a death, a bad day. When you're traveling and things just are not going your way, you get lost. An unexpected, really horrific trauma that just comes out of nowhere. A disagreement with somebody. Receiving constructive criticism, or even receiving hateful remarks that are not constructive. Dealing with unruly, disagreeable, annoying, horrible people, or even an illness. Mature people tend to act more stoic in these situations. Like I said, not all the time. People are not perfect, especially if it's a situation you've just never dealt with before. That's kind of like a part of you that you've never gotten to know, right? But here's the beautiful part about that, is that you can take steps to prevent acting out in a way that you prefer not to, in an unexpected situation that you never thought could ever happen to you. And that is by regulating your nervous system. And this is it's a practice that you do over time, and it takes a lot of time. And part of that is healing traumas, going to therapy. Some people do EMDR therapy, some people do DBT therapy, some people meditate, some people quit substances, and then process things without numbing them. This is all part of regulating the nervous system. And when you do that, you're just more likely to stay calm in all situations. You know, these are the types of people that you want with you at the end of the world. Some homework for you. This should be fun. Go watch like an end of the world movie and watch like the main characters that are like the badasses, and just see how calm and cool and collected they are. It's pretty fun to watch that, because you can say, hey, I want to be like that. Like maybe years ago, I don't think I would ever stay calm in like a zombie apocalypse, for example. But I think now, today, if I weren't a zombie, if I didn't get turned into a zombie, I think I would stay fairly calm enough to, at the very least, get to safety in some way, shape, or form, you know? And I can say that I wouldn't just flip out and freak out and break down and have an emotional breakdown. That I actually feel confident that I would be able to kind of shut my brain up and just get right to it, you know, get to the problem-solving portion. Because your typical average human, when something really horrific happens, they go through phases, right? Typically. Almost like the 7 stages of grief, but it's like the 7 stages of realizing that something horrible has just happened. And a lot of people will freak out. They'll be in denial. They might be angry. They might cry. And all of that is a waste of time, especially if you need to get to safety in some way, shape, or form. Where you want to be at is, as soon as something happens, you want to be focused and in problem-solving mode. You want to skip all the other steps. That's where you want to be at. That's the goal, at least. It's a little hard for people to do that. I think a lot of people in the military know how to do that type of shit, but that's kind of like the ultimate maturity, is like that resilience and stoicism when it comes to dealing with difficult situations. It's like you're somebody else's rock. You can hold down the fort, if you will. Another thing mature people do in rough situations, horrible situations, once they surpass kind of the initial shock of everything, they tend to look towards a brighter perspective. This is not toxic positivity. It's almost like finding another way to look at it. So, I lost my job. So a way that I like to look at it is, this gives me a new opportunity to find a better job, to find a higher paying job, maybe even to find more appreciation, a better company, what wouldn't be helpful is feeling bad for myself, feeling sorry for myself, saying this was the best job I'll ever have, this is the best job I could ever get, I'm never going to find another job that was great as this one. That would be what you don't want to do. And what you'll notice is, when you change your perspective, you change your life. Changing your perspective actually changes your circumstances. I'm not joking. So when you stop playing the woe is me game, you start to actually play the game of life and you start to win. Absolutely. Mature people do not lash out at others when they're having a bad day, or they're having a bad moment, or they just got some bad news. They do not use the silent treatment. They do not yell and throw temper tantrums when something doesn't go their way, An example, a Karen at a grocery store, the epitome of a grown-ass woman who did not fucking grow up, mentally and emotionally. If you're ever wondering, what the fuck is a Karen? A Karen is an incredibly childish adult woman. That's what a Karen is. And there are male Karens as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. What do we call them? Kevins? Yeah, overall, mature people. This brings me to my next point. Mature people have empathy enough to think about how they make others feel. So no, they would never fucking yell or lash out at, for instance, their partner and make their partner a punching bag if they had a bad day at work or if life's just not going their way. They just wouldn't do that, because mature people have what I like to call real empathy, or intelligent empathy, or empathy with discernment. You can call it any of those. But these days, most people do not have real empathy. They have what is called performative empathy. And you will see this a lot in the Liberal Party, where they virtue signal. A good example of that was when Billie Eilish went on stage at the Grammys and said, no one's illegal on stolen land. Okay, super simple to say something like that. But then a tribe whose land her, millions of dollars house was on, reached out and said, hey, that's our land. Silence, The thing is, it's so easy to say words. So easy to say words. It's hard to put those words into action. She could have, what she could have done was say, you're right, I'm so sorry, here's some money. I don't know, I'm not saying money solves all, but she could have done something in that respect. Or for the people who came to her door, she could have opened it and said, well, look, you're right, let me give you a tour of my home, because I am open to people, whatever, I don't know. I know that's maybe a security breach, but that's the thing. That's why we have borders. Hello. It just proved more of why we have borders. It's like another type of empathy, which is suicidal empathy, where it's like, yes, bring anyone and everyone into this fucking country because they're human and we love human rights and we need to treat everybody equally. It's like, okay, yeah, I love human rights too. I'm a fucking human. I believe in human rights. If you're a human who doesn't believe in human rights, I'm seriously questioning if you're suicidal. But human rights and any type of empathy has a cap, all right? We don't want to go all like free-for-all and let immigrants into our country without regulating and making sure they're not dangerous and making sure that they respect our country. There's steps that we need to take. It's not like we don't let anybody into the country. We just want to regulate who comes into the country, and I think that that's a fair middle ground compromise. But suicidal empathy is just like, you know, even if it's like a serial killer who's killed like 17 women or something. It's like, oh, don't be mean to him. He's just... he's just a guy that killed a lot of people. It's kind of like, so suicidal empathy is more like, you have empathy for anyone and everyone, even if they're really bad people. As long as they fit under a certain umbrella term, like they're a minority, or they're an immigrant, or they're gay, or they're trans, as long as they fit under a certain umbrella term, or a buzzword term, you have empathy for them no matter what. It's like, okay, all the trans women shooters, we can't misgender them. We can't misgender them. And this is kind of the problem with women, is that mostly women have the suicidal empathy. So what is real empathy then with discernment? Well, I kind of already explained it, but it's like you have empathy, but your empathy has boundaries. Your empathy has parameters. You don't just, you know, empathy without boundaries and parameters is people pleasing. It's abandoning yourself. It's self-abandonment. It's giving your energy away. Giving your power away just so somebody else can thrive. People pleasing is actually an inherently selfish act, wherein you're performing empathy in order to be liked. You're performing empathy in order to not be abandoned. You're performing empathy for another hidden agenda that you have for yourself. Virtue signaling, people pleasing, all this type of empathy is typically self-centered and narcissistic. It's like, hey, I'm a good person because I believe this, or I do this, or it's empathy almost with benefits. If your empathy has benefits for you, I would question your empathy, honestly, because a lot of the time, most of the time, empathy has nothing to do with you. If you have true empathy for somebody else, you are just truly upset for somebody else. It has nothing to do with you. But a lot of people can't see that. That's a very nuanced, difficult thing to discern and distinguish. So, I mean, it's kind of understandable because these people are very simple-minded. These people who think that their own virtue signaling, suicidal empathy is real, true empathy, these people are very simple-minded. They don't know how to distinguish. And they call anybody who thinks that they're not thinking like them evil, when the reality is, no, we are actually just discerning and logical, as opposed to just reacting on all emotions and feelings. We're actually very logical. Humans only have empathy, room for true empathy, for 150 other humans. That is a scientific fact, or a psychological fact, typically. So once you start to have or want to have empathy for like more people than that, it tends to become performative and fake. Not only that, you might be abandoning yourself. There's this guy I worked with he had people pleaser tendencies. And the worst part about people pleasers is that they will sabotage you in order to please the big boss, you know? And it's like, fuck, man. Like, you're literally bending me over because you don't want to be bent over, right? People pleasing is a horrible, horrible disease, I believe, that people have. You know, people pleasers have actually done me the worst. One of my best friends was a people pleaser. We are no longer friends. But she would do the most horrible shit to me just to please other people. Mature people know how to say no. Mature people know how to balance empathy with self-protection. Mature people are not people pleasers, and they are not suicidally apathetic, and they are not mean and horrible and lacking in empathy either. There is a balance. They understand that their actions affect other people. They have spatial awareness. They know how to read a room. They know how to read other people. And they can take a hint. If they're on a date and they feel like their date's not so super interested, they're gonna be able to catch on to that. And they're gonna be able to say, they might even take themselves out of the equation and say, well, I've had a good time, but maybe we're not clicking, maybe we're not connecting, you know? Mature people know how to leave other people alone, give people space when they feel the energy is just off. But they also respect themselves enough to say, hey, I don't appreciate you not communicating. So they're communicative, and they also expect that in return. Mature people expect the respect they give other people to be given back to them, and if that doesn't happen, those people are out of their life. And that's how it goes. It's very freeing to be mature, actually, because you don't give a fuck if anybody hates you or dislikes you or thinks you're a bitch because you don't want to deal with their toxicity. So freeing. Absolutely freeing. I don't need to perform empathy to be liked. I don't need to... Performing is exhausting. I don't need to... You know, I'm super authentic. I'm just myself. If you like me, you like me. If you hate me, you hate me. I really don't give a flying fuck. And that's free. It's freeing to be mature. It really is. So the most mature people will make mistakes. They will have moments of weakness. They will have arguments. They will have disagreements. They will do things that they wouldn't normally do. Yes. Because why? Because we're human. We're not perfect. We're not robots. And that's not the point of this. Like I said, it's on a spectrum. If you have mostly peace in your life and long-term, if you have peace in your life and long-term stability, most likely you're going in the right direction. And then the beauty of that is when, like, the general bit of your life is pretty good to go, you can then start to work on the little tweaks. You can tweak little things here and there. And then, you know, so I'm 32. And it's fantastic to know that my future is going to be bright. Because I'm at the point where even if life around me is shaky, my inner world is stable and peaceful. And no matter what happens around me, I know that I'm going to be okay. And just knowing that is very freeing, it's very peaceful in and of itself. To know that, yes, my future is going to be bright because I can handle whatever life throws at me and continue to be okay. I'm not gonna lash out, I'm not gonna act like a fucking monkey. I'm stable. And that's freeing, that's peaceful. It makes you more confident. It gives you the space in the room to be kind to people. It gives you the space in the room to be empathetic. Because being empathetic, actually having empathy for people, you need to actually have the space for that because it takes a lot of energy. So if you're too busy with your life in terms of your own drama, you're not really gonna have the time for real empathy, true empathy. So yeah, it gives me the space to actually be kind and empathetic towards other people and to help other people and to make them feel good about themselves, which is why I can have this channel. Because I have the space and the peace of mind in my own life to be able to create this content to help other people. And like I've said before, I try to put into practice all the time what I talk about in videos. It's not just, so sometimes I'll put out videos where I'm in shambles. And then I'm telling you how I'm dealing with the fact that I'm in shambles, you know? Just to show you that what I do works. So if you like what I'm saying, would love to have you around again. Would love to have you to come back to another video and keep watching. I absolutely love my supporters. That's why I do this. I will, you know, when I get more time on my hands, I'm probably going to start offering some phone calls, some supportive coaching calls, if you guys are interested in that. But, you know, that's something in the future. And, you know, until next time, I will see you in the next video.